Hey everyone, welcome to Exercise Check. In this video, we're going to be going over models and model binding that can be found in Chapter 12.5. So let's get started. As always, we come up to the Launch Code website. We are at 12.5 Exercises, Edit Model Classes. We're going to add functionality to edit event objects that we found in Coding Events application. So that means we're going to have to open the Coding Events application in IntelliJ. So I had that open behind this window. These exercises also assume that we have all of the coded added from those previous videos found in this chapter. Make sure that you do complete those videos before you complete this one. It looks like now we're going to have to create a new branch with a descriptive name called Edit Events. So let's go ahead and do that. I come back. Perfect. And now let's keep going. The first step says that we need to create two handler methods listed in the event controller. We'll add code to these in a moment, so just put the method outlines there for them now. All right, so I'm going to copy this and paste it into event controller. I'm going to paste it at the very bottom. All right, now in step number 2, add the necessary annotations to these methods for both of them to live at the pass events edits. We have to choose, though, which one is going to get the get mapping and which one's going to get the post mapping. So let's go ahead and do that now. So one says display edit form and one says process edit form. So I know if I want to display HTML or any kind of information without an action, I'm going to do a get mapping on this. So I'm going to say get mapping. Let's go back to our exercise, grab that URL that it wants us to put this mapping at, put inside of there, and perfect. And down here, I do the same thing, but this one says process edit form, meaning processing, doing an action, doing something after maybe some kind of event occurs. Therefore, I'm going to put a post mapping here with that same URL. So it looks like this one says we'll need to configure the route for display edit form to include the path variable event ID so that the events look like this. All right, not a problem. So it looks like if we need to have the variable in the path, we're going to need to add a path variable at the very end of here. That path variable looks like it's going to be called event ID. So let's go ahead and add that. It said we needed to add that on the display edit form. So I'm going to append a path variable here and call it event ID. Great. And then it looks like we already have that path variable inside of our parameters. Remember, event ID and event ID have to match here in order for this to work. Now we need to create an edit.html within this directory. So it says /templates/events. Let's go in there. /templates/events, and then it says we need to create an edit.html. I know this is going to be a time-leaf site, so I'm going to go ahead and grab some code here. I could have just used the template that I have stored, but I'm just going to do it the hard way just for this one. There we go. I got my starter code. Come back here. It looks like we need to copy the code from the create.html into the edit.html. So it looks like I kind of jumped the gun there, but I'm going to do that anyway right now. So create.html, I copy it, bring it over to the edit.html, remove everything, and then paste. Perfect. Apparently, we'll want to update the text of the submit button to reflect the edit functionality. So let's go and do that. Let's find that submit button. I see I have my input here, submit, and it says value create. We're not creating here, we're editing. So just like our instructions says, we need to say edit here instead of create. Great. All right, so back in the display edit form handler, we need to round out the controller method. So let's see what we have to do there. We have to use the event data method to find the event object with a given event ID. All right, so let's go ahead and first find it. I go back to event controller, and it says we need to be here in the display edit form. From our previous videos, how we find an event with an ID is that I call to the data layer event data that we created and say get by ID. And then I need to pass in an event ID. Luckily, we're getting one through the path itself. So I'm going to use that inside of my parameter. This is how we would get the event. Let's keep going. It says we need to put the event object inside the model using that add attribute. So let's go ahead and do that. So how I do that is I say model with a lowercase m, say add attribute. I have to give my attribute a name. So I'm going to say event here. And then I'm going to pass in the actual event variable. So I can just copy this and paste it in here and remove this line. So I can do it all within one line. Going back, it says we need to return the appropriate template string. That template string, again, is going to be that edit.html. So how we do that is that we drop the HTML from that name and we say return edit. Take out this comment, and there we go. All right, so now that we're done here, we're going to move on and we're going to go to step 6 within the form fields of edit.html. All right, so it looks like we need to get the name and the description from the event that was passed in via the model that we just did on the previous step and set them as the values of the form fields. So let's go ahead and do that. So like it said, we're passing in this attribute here called event that is that event by the event ID. So what I have to do is go over to the edit.html and we need to populate these inputs with that editable data. And how we do that is we can say th value equals and then the actual event data. So you say $, then event dot name here. And the same with description. This th value is going to populate this text box then with the proper value. Let's go back. And it says we need to add the th action here to the form tag. So I'm going to go ahead and do that too. Come back here, go to the form, and paste this action. Great. All right, let's go ahead and try to run this and see what happens. Uh-oh, looks like we're getting an error here. It says specifically missing return statement. I clicked on this and it's saying line 67. It is absolutely correct. And it is expecting a string to be returned as the return type. So I just put a return string here. Just for the time being, we'll change that in a few moments. Let's go ahead and run this once more. Great, it gets started. I'll come back here, say localhost 8080. We're going to create an event. I'm going to call it test event, my first event. I'm going to create this, and we have an ID of 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say events/edit, and I need to put in that path variable. So I'm going to put in 1. I press enter, and it looks like I made a small error here. So down below, I put in events/edit/event ID, as well as events/edit here. So that technically is correct, but I failed to notice one thing. At the very top here, we have a request mapping, events. So what I need to do down here is actually take out this /events here. And now this should work a little bit better. Let's go and restart our server and try again. I come back here, I refresh our website. It's not going to find anything. What I need to do is I go to events once again, create an event, test. This is a test event. Create it. And now I'm going to try to do that edit one more time. Edit/1. And now I'm getting a 500. And it says error resolving the template edit. It looks like I made one more mistake. So let's go back here. And I absolutely did. I said just edit, but it looks like that this file was in with our templates within events and then edit. So I need to add one more thing here. I need to say events/edit. That's where we're actually going to find this template. So third time's a charm. Let's try this again. Perfect. Refresh, create an event, test events. Let's try this again. There we go. /edit/1. Awesome. Now we see everything's working. We have our name and it's being populated as well as our description. Great, but if we click this edit button right now, that would send a post request. And we know that we haven't put any code in for our post request. So I'm not gonna press this because I know that everything's gonna blow up. So we're gonna go back to our exercise and see what we have to do next. It says we need to add another input to hold the ID of the event that's being edited, and it should be hidden from the user. because we don't want the user to edit this ID. So let's do that. I copied that line. We're going to go back to the edit.html, and I'm going to paste this at the very top here. But we use this very special attribute that says type hidden. So the user will not see this whatsoever, but our value will be populated. Why do we do this? Because when we send back the post, this information will be included in that post, therefore helping us out and our controller out when we actually have to update this data. But let's see how this plays out. Now on step 8, it says back in the display edit form, we need to add a title to the model that reads edit event name ID equals ID, where name and ID are replaced by the values of the given event. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. I come back up here to the event controller, and I'm going to create a variable up here that says string title. Coming back to our exercise here, I'm going to copy this and paste it. Edit event name has to be replaced with the actual event name. So I'm going to say event.getName, and then the ID, which has to be replaced with the ID. So I'm going to say event.getID. Now we see that we're getting a few errors here. Event is not existent on any of our local variables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it out of this add attribute up here, create an event called event, and save it up here into a variable so other people can access it, such as this line, as well as this line, once we place it in here. Additionally, we created this title, and it says we need to pass it in as an attribute. So I'm going to say add attribute. I'm going to call it title, and then pass in that title string variable. There we go. Let's hop back over to our exercise. All right, on to step number 9. In process edit form, query the event data for the event that's being edited with a given ID parameter. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. We come down here to our post mapping, and we see we're getting back 3 different variables. We have our event ID, our name, and our description. So it said we need to query event data. So we're going to do that. So we say event data and get by ID. And I know the ID that's going to be coming back is event ID. So I queried that. Query simply is saying that go get the data from whoever's holding it, in this case, our data layer. And I'm going to save what it gets back into an event variable. Here we go. All right, so I'm getting my event back. I'm querying it. Update the name and the description of the event with the appropriate data using those setters. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Say my event.set name. I'll do the name first, and I'm going to pass in that name coming up here from our parameters. Next, I'm going to say my event.set description. Again, I'm going to do it from our parameter up here, description. So I pass in description. Great, now we're updating my event. Looks like then we have to redirect the user to /events. All right, let's go ahead and do that. So down here, to redirect, we use the keyword redirect, and then said we need to redirect them to events. So I'm going to say /events, and we'll see if this works. If you're asking yourself up here why we just set the name and the description, but we didn't re-add it to events data, this is because we're updating the data. If you remember our discussion about references, the reference that's stored inside of event data will get updated here. So we don't have to re-add anything to event data. We're updating the reference here in this code. This is where references really comes into play and really helps us out. So let's go ahead and restart our server. We come back here, we go up to our local host, and we're going to go back to our local host here. Make sure we refresh, create an event, and then we are going to say test event once more. Great, we create it. And now let's go directly to our edit screen, edit/1, test event. So I'm going to call this edited event, and I'm going to press edit. And now we come back to the events we got redirected properly, and it says edit event, and this is a new description. So it looks like our edit is working properly. One thing I did notice though, is that when we do edit/1, is that we are now getting this fancy title up here. Edit event, edited event, ID equals 1. That string that we also created that we're passing into the attributes is now being shown here on this edit screen. Great, let's go back and see if we have to do anything else in this exercise. To access the event editing, the user will need an edit option in the list of event data. So it looks like we're going to have to edit this events/index.html file and add a link for that. So let's go ahead and copy this and see where we have to do this exactly. It says TD, so it has to be a cell. That's what I know. TD is a cell inside of a table. So I'm going to be looking out for that. All right, so it says that we need to add this line somewhere. I see my other TDs down here. These are my actual cells data, and this up here is just my header information. So down here is where I'm going to actually place that and save that. So we're going to create a fourth cell here in this row that says edit. Great, let's see if this works. Come back to our website. Up here, go back to localhost. Refresh one more time. Create. All right, and now we see an ID, a name, a description, then we see an edit here. So I click edit, and that brings me to my screen. Awesome. Put a few exclamation points behind here to make sure that everything is edited properly, and it is. Great. One more thing I see up here is that I see these lines kind of not extending fully over the edit screen. So just to fix that, what I would do is that I come over here. I'm going to call this final header actions. So if they wanted to edit this, that's an action. So I just call that header actions. So we do that, come back here, refresh. Oh, there we go. Refresh, now we see that actions column. Create an event. All right, we have our ID of 1, our last event, here it is, and then edit. All right, great, let's go back to our exercise. And that looks like everything we have to do for this one. That being said, we are all finished with this exercise. Thanks for working with me up until the end. And as always, thanks for watching.